What's up YouTube, it's your boy Nash here, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be showcasing to you guys my top 10 WrestleMania matches of all time. I know that I might get hated for some of these, but this is just based on WrestleMania cards that were spot on. They were just like incredible. The staging was incredible, or the fact that it sold a lot of tickets. It's based on that, but it's also based on my personal opinion on how these matches were, if you will. So hopefully you guys do enjoy this top 10. If you guys do enjoy it and you guys want to see more top 10 videos in the future, make sure you guys give this video a thumbs up and make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any future content. And as always, make sure you guys follow me on Twitter and Instagram. The links are down in the description below, and if you guys want to send fan mail, the info will also be in the description as well. Also, if you feel like that there was some matches, some matches that I missed, or you feel like certain matches, hang on guys. There we go. Sorry guys, I got something caught in my throat. Or if you feel like a certain match on this top 10 shouldn't be on this top 10 or anything like that, let me know down in the comments below. I am very curious about that. And without any further ado, let's get straight into it. Starting off with the honorable mentions. There's a few. There's actually 6. So coming in at number 6 of the honorable mentions, we have Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels for the WWE title at WrestleMania 14 at the TD Garden in Boston, with Iron Mike Tyson as the special enforcer. The reason why I have this at number 6 in the honorable mentions is because of two things. Number one, this match right here was the match that sparked the Monday Night Wars, if you will. Obviously, you do have, Stone Cold versus Bret Hart that truly started the Monday Night Wars, but when you get down to it, as far as the ratings go, and as far as like ratings for Raw each week, this match right here was the one match that completely started it all, that sparked the rivalry between DX and the Nation of Domination, DX and the Corporation, and of course too, DX and the NWO. So this was a match that a lot of people were hyped about, but once the match was over, people realized it was okay. It was okay. But the second reason was the fact that Iron Mike Tyson, when he stepped into the hollow grounds of WWE, the fans just booed him completely out of the building because they knew how good he was. The problem was that the fans did not like how he operated things in the boxing ring, if you will. So that's pretty much, that's why I have this at number 6 in the honorable mentions. Coming in at number 5 is Triple H versus The Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell, the end of an era, WrestleMania 28 in Miami. This was actually a very weird match, because this match lasted almost an hour, close to an hour, and it became one of the most watched Hell in a Cell matches in history. But the only problem is that even though Triple H lost, his era was still going strong no matter what happened. It was hyped up as the end of an era, but the only problem was that Triple H's era was not done. So it was pretty much all for nothing, you know. The phrase "end of an era" was just all smoke and mirrors in my honest opinion. Coming in at number 4 is a Battle of Hearts. Owen Hart versus Bret Hart, WrestleMania 10, Madison Square Garden. This was actually a match that a lot of people did not think would ever happen, because Bret Hart at WrestleMania 9, right around that time, had become WWE champion, and I believe if the history books are correct, I believe Bret Hart had defeated Ric Flair, I believe, to win the WWE title. He ended up losing it to Yokozuna at WrestleMania 9 in Caesar's Palace in Vegas, but he ended up regaining it just a year later at WrestleMania 10. In fact, Bret Hart, I believe Bret Hart is the only person, other than Hulk Hogan, I think Bret Hart is the only other superstar who has competed in a match at WrestleMania more than one time. Then again, I think Randy Savage became one of them. Became another one at WrestleMania 4. But for him to go up against his own brother and then have to challenge for the WWE title is insane. So that's why I had this at number 4, because after Bret Hart became WWE champion, Owen Hart came out and just stared at him. He didn't shake his hand. He didn't nothing. He just stared at him in disgust, proving he hated his brother. Coming in at number 3, we have a very interesting rivalry from the 80s. It is Mr. T versus Roddy Piper in a boxing match at WrestleMania 2. This was the only WrestleMania in history to be held in 3 different locations. I believe the first one, let me take a look. I know the first one was the Nassau Coliseum. The second venue was, I think, in New York. Let's see. WrestleMania 2. There were 3 locations that WrestleMania 2 was held in. The first was the Nassau Coliseum in Uniondale, New York. The second venue was the Rosemont Horizon. Sorry guys, my brother texted me. Anyway, the second venue was actually the Allstate Arena, or I guess the Rosemont. Yeah. The Allstate Arena in Chicago. And then the third venue was actually the LA Memorial Sports Arena in downtown LA, having a combined attendance of 40,085. Which was pretty insane. And the card itself, across all 3 venues, was rather unique. So when you look at the one from the Nassau Coliseum, you have Paul Orndorff against against the Magnificent Morocco, which ended in a double countout. They had Randy Savage versus George the Animal Steel for the Intercontinental title, which was one of the weirdest matches anybody could ever watch, if you will. And then of course you had Jake the Snake Roberts against George Wells, in a simple one-on-one match. And then you had again this matchup, Mr. T with Joe Frazier against Roddy Piper with Lou Duva, I believe is his name. I probably butchered his name, and Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. Which was a very intriguing matchup, and then of course too you had several other matches on the card. You had the Fabulous Moolah versus Velvet McIntyre for the women's title. You had the the battle royal that featured the WWE versus the NFL stars, and then of course you had the match for the tag team titles, as well as the steel cage match for the WWE title, which was Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy. This matchup right here, Mr. T and against Roddy Piper was by far the most one of the most intense rivalries ever, because of the fact that Roddy Piper hated the fact that a guy like Mr. T was invading his turf, and I guess Roddy Piper was trying to show Mr. T the meaning of respect in WWE. So that's why I have this in the honorable mentions in number 3, is because a lot of people didn't like how the match ended, but it was a way to not only get Roddy Piper over with the fans once he started to become a babyface in the future, but it was also a way to get Mr. T over with the fans as he transitioned into becoming a WWE Hall of Famer many years later. Coming in at number 2 is one that I'm pretty sure I'm going to get hated for, but it is the Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan, winner take all for the Intercontinental title and the WWE title at WrestleMania 6. This matchup was absolutely insane. It was probably by far the best match of the WrestleMania 6 card. And yet people wanted to see Hulk Hogan win, but the Ultimate Warrior ended up winning it. I believe this was a way. I believe this was the only way to give Hulk Hogan the time off for him to work the first ever WWE movie, No Holds Barred, which featured Tommy Tiny Lister, or Debo. If you guys remember Debo from Friday, he actually played Zeus. So this was a really good one, but still, a lot of people were expecting one outcome. They ended up getting a different outcome. And then the last honorable mention, we have Batista versus Triple H for the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania 21 inside the what's now being known as the Crypto.com Arena, which is complete bullshit. Staples Center. Yeah, given the fact that this was a matchup between former Evolution tag team partners, not much else to say about that. I've got nothing else to say about that. Those are the honorable mentions. If you feel like that certain other matches should have been on the mentions list, let me know in the comments. I will be doing the exact same thing, but for NXT takeovers, which I've already gotten that written down, so I'm actually excited for that. I'll probably be doing that on Saturday. But coming in at number 10 of the top WrestleMania matches is Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage for the WWE title at WrestleMania 5. WrestleMania 4 became one of the most hated from what I had seen online. Recently, it became one of the most hated WrestleManias of all time because of the fact that there was a tournament that took place at WrestleMania 4. The tournament was actually, it was a tournament to determine who would become the vacant WWE champion. From what I remember, from what I remember, there was a rematch that featured there was a rematch at the first ever Saturday Night's main event that featured Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant for the WWE title, and it's interesting because the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase had paid a referee that looked like the WWE referee, I think Earl Hebner, I think was his name, Hebner, to screw Hulk Hogan out of the WWE title, and the title ended up on the shoulder of Andre the Giant, but Andre took the title and gave it to Ted DiBiase. Therefore, at the time, WWE president at the time, Jack Tunney, actually took the title from DiBiase and said, we're going to have a tournament at WrestleMania 4 to determine who will become the new WWE champion. The one thing that I found so interesting about this one is the fact that this became a very weird card, to say the very least. So the superstars that competed in the tournament were Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Ted DiBiase, Don Muraco, Dino Bravo, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Randy Savage, Butch Reed, Bam Bam Bigelow, One Man Gang, Jake the Snake Roberts, Rick Rude, Hulk Hogan, and Andre the Giant. Hogan and Andre ended up competing in the quarterfinals of the match, but unfortunately it ended in a double disqualification. So DiBiase ended up getting a bye from the semifinals straight into the finals. Why? It's simple. DiBiase paid Andre the Giant to get themselves both disqualified, so he would get a bye straight into the finals. Randy Savage ended up defeating Butch Reed, Greg Valentine, and the One Man Gang to make it to the finals, and ended up defeating DiBiase to win the entire tournament. Not only did we have that the tournament, but we had the battle royal. We had a matchup between the Ultimate Warrior and Hercules. We had Bruce the Barber Beefcake versus the Honky Tonk Man for the Intercontinental title. We had a 6-man. There was a 6-man tag match, a match for the tag titles, and then of course the vacant WWE title match at the end. WrestleMania 5 became a much more different feel, if you will, because of the fact that Randy Savage held the title for an entire year and defended the title against Hulk Hogan in a battle of the Mega Powers exploding. And Hulk Hogan ended up picking up the victory, making this match one of the greatest WWE title matches in history. Which then brings me to number 9. Edge and Christian, the Hardys, the Dudleys, in a triangle ladder match for the tag team titles at WrestleMania 16. WrestleMania 16 became one of the top 4 forgotten WrestleManias of all time. Why? Because of the fact that WrestleMania 16 had a lot of like blood and gore and all that. All the weapons were being used. And, you know, especially in that hardcore battle royal, that was a gnarly matchup, to say the very least. But this match truly became the highlight of WrestleMania 16 because it showcased it showcased what tag team wrestling can truly be about when there's tag team titles hanging 15 feet high with a ladder. These 6 superstars, these 3 teams, took over WrestleMania like it was nothing, and it became one of the most talked about WrestleMania matches in WrestleMania history. Absolutely insane. But speaking of ladder matches, we have Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon, against Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental title in a ladder match at WrestleMania 10. This match became the first ladder match in WrestleMania history with the Intercontinental title defended. Razor Ramon, or I guess Scott Hall, staked claim that he was the true Intercontinental champion. Shawn Michaels said the exact same thing. So what did WWE do? They decided to have them hang their titles 15 feet high and have a ladder match. This became one of the best matches of the entire night, despite having Owen Hart versus Bret Hart, despite having Bret Hart versus Yokozuna. This match became the best match we had ever seen of that whole card, because of the fact that it got, not only did it get Shawn Michaels over as he was starting to become a babyface, but this also got Scott Hall over as one of the true babyfaces of WWE at that time. And this matchup was what got Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall to become Hall of Famers, not only as part of not only as singles competitors, but Shawn Michaels as part of DX and Scott Hall as a part of the NWO, which was an incredible matchup. But speaking of the Intercontinental title, coming in at number 7 is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus the Macho Man Randy Savage for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 3. This was by far one of the most insane matches of all time. Sure, there was Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, the match that everybody was wanting to see. But this was a match that got Randy Savage over as he started to become a babyface, because as I had talked about when I showcased the number 10 spot, Randy Savage was a heel. Ricky the Dragon was a babyface, but there were rumors that his contract with WWE was going to expire, and he was going to jump ship from WWE over to WCW, and he ended up doing that, I believe, a few years later, as the history books were told, I believe? I'm not so sure. I'll have to take a look. I think so. I think that might be the case, but this matchup had lasted, I would say, over 20 minutes, if I'm right on that. And Ricky the Dragon truly became the top babyface of that era in WWE, and became one of the greatest Intercontinental champions of all time. This match, insane. Coming in at number 6 is probably by far the. I feel like this match should have been at number 1, but I put this at number 6 because of one important detail, which I'll showcase, which I will reveal here in just a second. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, WrestleMania 12. The Iron Man match, the 60-minute Iron Man match for the WWE title. The first ever Iron Man match ever in wrestling history. This became one of the most talked about matches of all time. Why? It's simple. We never thought, nobody knew what an Iron Man match was. Until the WWE had revealed the rules. And the rules are simple. You put 60 minutes on a clock, and you wrestle for exactly 60 minutes. The only way to score a point is by pinfall, submission, countout, or disqualification. Whoever has the most points at the end of the 60 minutes becomes WWE Champion. The reason why I put this at number 6 is simple. Neither one scored a point. This became a wrestling classic. This became a wrestling classic in WrestleMania history. And the fact that Shawn Michaels picked up the one and only fall of the match in overtime is the reason why I put this at number 6, is because this match lasted 60 minutes. Nobody scored a point, and Bret Hart, this is what got Bret Hart over to become a heel, because by WrestleMania 13 in Chicago, he became one of the most hated heels in all of WWE, and there were rumors of his contract expiring at the end of 1997. Which is what truly sparked the Monday Night Wars alongside the matchup between Austin and Michaels. So this matchup was an incredible match, but the only downside was the fact that we didn't know who was going to be WWE champion until after the match went into overtime, and it ended up being Shawn Michaels. But speaking of Shawn Michaels, we actually have 2 other matches that are on this list that featured Shawn Michaels. This one is at number 5. Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho. WrestleMania 19, Safeco Field in Seattle. This was a match that Shawn Michaels didn't need to win. This was a match that he had to... that Jericho needed to win, because it was a battle of the young gun versus the veteran, trying to see who's going to be the top guy on Raw at that time. And Shawn Michaels ended up picking up that victory, but Jericho was not having it. He was like, you know what? Low blow, and just walk away. Plain and simple. Not much else to say about that. I will say this though. Even though Jericho became the first ever undisputed champion in WWE, Shawn Michaels became the only person of the Attitude Era, if you will, that had won every championship under the sun. WWE title, Tag Team title, Intercontinental title, European title. He even also had won the World Heavyweight title as well when Eric Bischoff brought that title back to WWE. But not only that, Shawn Michaels, his last championship in WWE was the Unified Tag Team titles alongside Triple H and DX. So this matchup was a match that Jericho had to win, because by defeating Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, he could possibly have been the next Mr. WrestleMania, but Shawn Michaels ended up picking up that victory. Speaking of Bret Hart, we have Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 8. This was actually the highlight of the entire card for a few reasons. Number one was the fact that you had 2 top baby faces in WWE going at it for the right to become Intercontinental Champion, to etch their name in history as the all-time greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, and I believe Roddy Piper was the champion at that time. Bret Hart ended up taking the title off of Piper, and the respect was there for both men. I will say this. This was actually the match that got Roddy Piper over to become, I believe, the president, the temporary president of WWE, right around like the mid '90s, So this was a really great way to have ended Roddy Piper's in ring career in WWE, but he ended up transitioning over to WCW several years later, and yeah, his run was pretty good. I'll admit that. But I don't know if he ever won any championships. You guys can let me know in the comments. But this was a match to determine who was truly the number one babyface in WWE. Yeah, sure, you had Ric Flair versus Randy Savage. Yeah, you had Psycho Sid versus Hulk Hogan. But to be fair, this matchup, Roddy Piper versus Bret Hart, was the matchup that everybody wanted to see. But coming in at number 3 was probably by far the best match of all time. One of them. The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, the 25th anniversary of WrestleMania 25 at the Reliance Stadium in Houston. Two Texans beating the hell out of each other. Shawn Michaels from San Antonio, The Undertaker from Houston, beating the hell out of each other for not because of the streak, but just for bragging rights to see who was the better man. And people forget that Undertaker and Shawn Michaels has a very rich history, dating all the way back to their days in the Attitude Era over the WWE title, now transitioning over to to seeing who was the best in WWE. And when it came to WrestleMania, Undertaker was number 1, and he ended up proving that. But Shawn Michaels, on the other hand, he wasn't having it. He was not having it. As 1 year later, they faced off yet again, where it was the streak versus career. If Shawn Michaels won, the streak was over. Excuse me. If Undertaker won, Shawn Michaels' career was over, and Shawn said, "You don't get it. If I can't beat you at WrestleMania, I don't have a career. I'm done. It's over." So this matchup right here, Undertaker versus Michaels at WrestleMania 25, was one of the greatest wrestling matches of all time. Yeah, you did have Edge versus Orton at Backlash in 2020, but to be fair, this was a match that actually became one of the most talked about matches, and it's still being talked about to this day. When people ask what's the greatest wrestling match of all time, hands down, this is it. This match is it. Undertaker and Michaels, hands down. So this matchup definitely deserves the number 3 spot. But coming in at number 2, since we're on the topic of Edge and Orton, we have Edge versus Orton at WrestleMania 36, Last Man Standing. This became the only WrestleMania in history to have no fans. Why? Because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the fact that we were under the COVID-19 pandemic, Edge and Randy Orton put on a classic when it came to Last Man Standing matches. These guys put on a classic. These guys would stop at nothing to win over the other, but Edge picking up that victory over Orton was insane. Yes, they did end up having another match at Backlash, which ended up a victory over Edge by Randy Orton. These guys did not compete against each other until almost a year later. Right after the Royal Rumble, Edge battled Randy Orton, and Edge picked up the victory, thus picking up the rubber match over Randy Orton. But this matchup right here was probably the highlight of Edge's career, given what had happened to Edge during his time away from WWE after 9 years, So this matchup was absolutely insane. I have to admit it. But coming in at number 1, and I'm probably gonna get hated for this one, is The Rock versus John Cena at WrestleMania 28. This was by far one of the most incredible matches in WrestleMania history. By far. because you had two generational talent in The Rock and John Cena, two icons in their prime. You had John Cena, who was a 12-time, 13-time WWE champion at that time. The Rock was a 10-time world champion, and John Cena had won every championship under the sun. WWE title, World Heavyweight title, Tag Team title, Intercontinental title, United States title. The Rock had held the WWE title, the Tag Team titles, the Intercontinental title, the Undisputed title, and won the Royal Rumble match in 2000. Whereas opposed to John Cena, he had won in 2008 and in 2013, which was insane. Although this matchup took place in 2012, so he didn't get his second Royal Rumble win until almost a year later. But this matchup was basically a match to prove who was the best. Who was the best in their prime? Was it The Rock or was it John Cena? This was a match that Cena had to win. The Rock did not need to win this match. He didn't need to. He was already at the pinnacle of his career, where he can go pretty much anywhere he wants. You know, he can make movies, make TV shows, do whatever, while still, and then when he had time off, he can come back to WWE, kick some ass, and do his own thing. John Cena, this was a match that Cena had to win, because if he lost this match, which he did, his career would go downhill really quickly. And sure enough, it did. Yes, he did have a few major victories over Brock Lesnar. Obviously, having a major victory via the Money in the Bank ladder match, but those were the only highlights of his career. Every other match that he's had, downhill. The Rock ended up picking up the victory over John Cena, proving that The Rock was the better generational talent in his prime than John Cena. But the rivalry would not stop there, as well. John Cena would win the Royal Rumble and would choose The Rock for the WWE title, which Cena ended up winning, thus getting his redemption, if you will. I will say this, when you look at those two superstars, that matchup was probably one of the best matches of the entire WrestleMania 28 card, and everything else was just like utter BS in my honest opinion. But that is going to do it for the top 10 WrestleMania matches of all time. If you guys think that that I missed a few or anything like that, let me know in the comments, and that will do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash the thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel, you guys want to see more top 10 videos in the future, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you guys do not miss out on any new content that comes your way. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. All the links way down in the description below. And if you guys have any fan mail you guys want to send me, and you guys want me to open it up on the channel, all the info will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.